In the Grand Belmont estate, shy slave girl Mercy is forced to sing for cruel party guests as entertainment. But when her haunting voice reveals an extraordinary talent, it changes everything. Young Master Everett Belmont becomes determined to help her escape to freedom in the north, risking his inheritance and life for the woman whose voice awakened his conscience. Follow their dangerous journey as they flee slave catchers and forge an unexpected bond stronger than the chains meant to bind them. Before we start this story, comment below from where you are watching us. The grand parlor of the Belmont estate sparkled with light from dozens of oil lamps. Every wealthy family in the county had come to the annual spring party. Women in expensive dresses and men in fine suits laughed and talked, showing off their social status. In the corner, quietly arranging platters of sugared fruits, stood Mercy. At 23 years old, she was known only as the slave girl who never spoke and who knew how to disappear when people got mean. The Belmont family owned her, and she knew her place was to serve, not to be seen. Tonight, all the rich daughters had played piano perfectly, and the sons had recited poetry like they'd practiced for weeks. The room buzzed with fake laughter and hollow compliments. Eleanor Belmont, the lady of the house, looked bored. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on Mercy. A cruel smile spread across her face. "Ladies and gentlemen," Eleanor announced, raising her glass, "I think we need some fresh entertainment." The room quieted as everyone turned to look at her. "You there," Eleanor pointed at Mercy. "Come forward. Let's see if our slave girl can sing for us." People gasped. Some laughed nervously. A few older guests muttered that it wasn't proper. Mercy's heart pounded in her chest. She had never performed for anyone before, but she knew refusing wasn't an option. Slowly, she set down her tray and stepped forward, keeping her eyes on the floor. "Look at her," one woman whispered loudly. "She's terrified." "This should be amusing," a man chuckled. Mercy stood in the middle of the room, beneath the crystal chandelier. Her plain brown dress and bare feet made her look even more out of place among the silk and jewels surrounding her. "Well?" Eleanor prompted impatiently. "Sing something now." Mercy closed her eyes. She took a deep breath, and then she began to sing. The first note was soft, almost hesitant, but then her voice grew stronger. It was a melody without words, something that seemed to come from deep in her soul. The sound filled the room like nothing anyone had ever heard before. One by one, conversations stopped. People turned to stare. Eleanor's smug smile faded. Mercy's voice was pure and powerful. It rose and fell like waves on the ocean, telling a story of pain and hope that needed no words. Tears formed in the eyes of women who moments before had been laughing at her. Men who had mocked her now stood frozen, unable to look away. When the final note faded, the room remained completely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. It was as if everyone was afraid to break the spell her voice had cast. Then, from the back of the room, someone began to clap. Slowly at first, then with more confidence. It was Everett Belmont, the master's son. At 26, he was known for his strong opinions and kind heart, things that often put him at odds with his father. Everett walked through the crowd until he stood before Mercy. His eyes were bright with emotion. "That," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "was the most honest sound this house has ever known." His mother's face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. His father, Charles Belmont, frowned deeply. "That's quite enough, Everett," Charles said sharply. "The entertainment is over. Everyone, please enjoy the refreshments." The spell broken, guests began to move and talk again, but the atmosphere had changed. They spoke in hushed tones, glancing at Mercy with new eyes. "Return to your duties," Eleanor hissed at Mercy, "and don't think this little performance changes anything." Mercy nodded, and Dee quickly made her way back to the kitchen. Her hands trembled as she picked up a tray of empty glasses. She didn't understand what had just happened or why she'd had the courage to truly sing, instead of just humming a simple tune as expected. Later that night, after all the guests had gone home, Mercy cleaned the parlor alone. The house was quiet except for the occasional creak of the old wooden floors. "You're still awake?" Mercy jumped at the voice and turned to see Everett standing in the doorway. She immediately lowered her eyes. Yes, sir, just finishing up. Your voice, he said, stepping into the room. Where did you learn to sing like that? Mercy hesitated. Nowhere, sir. I just sing sometimes, when I'm alone. Everett moved closer. It was beautiful, like nothing I've ever heard. Thank you, sir. Mercy kept her eyes down, uncomfortable with his praise. My parents were upset, he said with a slight smile. They wanted to humiliate you, but instead you showed everyone in that room what true talent looks like. Mercy didn't know how to respond. No one had ever spoken to her this way before. I should finish my work, she said quietly. Of course. Everett nodded. But Mercy. She looked up, surprised he knew her name. Don't stop singing, no matter what they say or do. Promise me that. Before she could answer, the sound of footsteps made the M both turn. Eleanor Belmont stood in the doorway, her face hard with anger. Everett, what are you doing? She demanded. Just complimenting Mercy on her performance, he replied calmly. Go to bed, Eleanor snapped at him. And you, she turned to Mercy, report to Mr. Jenkins in the morning. I think you need more work to keep you busy. Mr. Jenkins was the overseer who assigned the hardest jobs on the estate. Everyone feared him. Yes, ma'am, Mercy whispered. Eleanor left, clearly expecting Everett to follow. Instead, he stayed a moment longer. I'm sorry, he said softly, but I meant what I said. Don't let them silence you. Then he was gone, leaving Mercy alone with her thoughts and fears about what tomorrow would bring. The next morning came too soon. Mercy had barely slept, worried about meeting with Mr. Jenkins. She dressed quickly and made her way to his small office near the stables. Jenkins was a short, stocky man with hard eyes and a reputation for cruelty. He looked up from his desk when Mercy entered. Ah, the singing slave, he said with a smirk. Heard you caused quite a stir last night. I'm sorry, sir, Mercy said, keeping her eyes down. Mrs. Belmont wants you punished, he said, standing up. Says you embarrassed her in front of her guests. Mercy's stomach tightened with fear. But, Jenkins continued, Mr. Belmont has other ideas. Seems some of those guests were mighty impressed with your voice. One of them even offered to buy you. Mercy's head snapped up in shock. That's right, Jenkins nodded. Mr. Preston from Charleston collects special slaves for his entertainment business. Offered a handsome sum, too. But this is my home, Mercy whispered before she could stop herself. Jenkins laughed. Home? This ain't your home, girl. Your property. And if the master decides to sell, you'll go. Just then the door opened and Everett walked in. Mr. Jenkins, he nodded. I'd like a word with Mercy, if you don't mind. Jenkins frowned but couldn't refuse the master's son. We were just finishing up. She's assigned to the cotton fields today. Actually, Everett said smoothly, I need her assistance in the library. Father's books need organizing, and Mercy can read, can't she? Jenkins looked surprised. I wouldn't know, sir. WL she can, so I'll be taking her with me. Before Jenkins could protest, Everett motioned for Mercy to follow him. They walked in silence until they reached the large library on the second floor of the main house. You can read, can't you? Everett asked once they were alone. Mercy hesitated, then nodded. Yes, sir. Mrs. Peterson, your mother's old lady's maid, taught me before she died. Good. Everett smiled. Because I meant what I said about needing help. But first I wanted to warn you. My father is considering Mr. Preston's offer. Mercy felt her heart sink. To buy me? Yes. Preston owns theaters in Charleston. He showcases unusual talents, as he calls them. What would happen to me there? Mercy asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Everett's face darkened. Nothing good. Preston is known for exploiting people for profit. I've heard terrible stories about how he treats his performers. What can I do? Mercy asked, fear evident in her voice. I'm going to try to convince my father not to sell you, Everett said. But in the meantime, don't draw attention to yourself, and certainly don't sing where anyone can hear you. Mercy nodded, grateful for his help, but confused by it. Why are you being kind to me? Everett looked at her for a long moment. Because your voice... He paused, searching for the right words. Your voice woke something in me I didn't know was still alive." Before Mercy could respond, the library door opened. Charles Belmont stood there, his eyes moving suspiciously between his son and Mercy. "Everett," he said coldly, "your mother is looking for you, and this girl should be in the fields, not the library." "I asked for her help with your books, Father," Everett explained. "They're in complete disarray." "We have other servants for such tasks," Charles replied. "This one is needed elsewhere." "Father, she can read. Most of our house slaves cannot." Charles frowned. "Who taught her to read?" Mercy held her breath, afraid to speak. "Mrs. Peterson, I believe," Everett answered for her, "before she passed." Charles looked displeased. "I see. Well, she can return to the library after she completes her field work. Mr. Jenkins is waiting." Mercy knew there was no arguing. "Yes, sir," she said, and with one last glance at Everett, she left the room. For the rest of the day, Mercy worked under the hot sun, picking cotton until her fingers bled. The other field hands avoided her, having heard about her performance the night before. Some looked at her with pity, others with envy. By sunset, Mercy was exhausted. As she made her way back to the slave quarters, she heard someone call her name. It was Lily, one of the kitchen maids. "Mercy, Mr. Everett is looking for you," Lily whispered excitedly. "He asked me to tell you to meet him by the old oak tree after everyone's asleep." Mercy's heart raced. Meeting Everett alone at night could mean serious trouble for both of them, especially her. "Did he say why?" she asked. Lily shook her head. "No, but he seemed worried. Said it was important." After a simple dinner of cornbread and beans, Mercy waited until the quarters grew quiet with sleep. Then, carefully, she slipped outside into the moonlit night. The old oak tree stood at the edge of the property, far enough from the main house to be private, but not so far as to be in the woods. It was where Mercy had first learned to hum as a child, finding comfort in the music she created. As she approached, she saw Everett already waiting. He turned at the sound of her footsteps. "You came," he said, relief in his voice. "Yes, sir," Mercy replied cautiously. "Lily said it was important." "It is." Everett's face was serious in the moonlight. "My father has agreed to sell you to Preston. He's coming to collect you next week." Mercy felt her legs weaken. She reached out to steady herself against the tree trunk. "What will happen to me?" she asked, though she already knew the answer wouldn't be good. Everett stepped closer. "I won't let it happen," he said firmly. "I've been thinking all day about how to stop this. There's nothing you can do," Mercy said sadly. "I'm just property to be sold." "Not to me," Everett said with unexpected passion. "Not after hearing you sing, not after seeing who you really are." Mercy looked up at him, confused by his words and the intensity behind them. "I have a plan," he continued, "but it's dangerous, and I need to know if you're willing to take the risk." "What kind of plan?" Mercy asked. Everett took a deep breath. "I can help you escape. Get you to the north, where you can be free." Mercy gasped. "Escape? But they'd hunt me down, and you'd be in terrible trouble for helping me." "Not if they don't know I helped," Everett said. "I have friends who work with the Underground Railroad. They can get you safely to Pennsylvania." Mercy's mind raced with possibilities and fears. Freedom had always seemed like an impossible dream. "Why would you risk so much for me?" she asked. Everett was quiet for a moment, then he said, "Because in all my life I've never heard anything as true as your voice, and the thought of Preston making you perform like some trained animal, hurting you if you refuse." His voice broke. "I can't let that happen." Before Mercy could respond, they heard voices in the distance, the night watchmen making their rounds. "I need to go," Mercy whispered urgently. "Meet me here tomorrow night," Everett said quickly. "Think about my offer. If you decide to stay, I'll understand, but if you want freedom, I'll help you find it." As Mercy slipped back to the slave quarters, her heart pounded with fear and something else, hope. For the first time in her life, she dared to imagine a different future. But as she lay on her thin mattress staring at the ceiling, doubts crept in. Could she trust Everett? What if it was a trick? And even if he was sincere, escape was dangerous. Slaves who were caught trying to run away for said terrible punishments, even death. Yet the alternative, Being sold to Preston, forced to perform, treated like an object, seemed just as frightening. Mercy closed her eyes and did the only thing that had always brought her comfort. Silently, so no one could hear, she began to hum a gentle melody. As the music filled her mind, she knew what her answer would be. Tomorrow night she would take the first step toward freedom, or toward an even more uncertain fate. The next day dragged on endlessly for Mercy. Every hour felt like a year as she worked in the hot fields, her hands raw from picking cotton. Her mind kept returning to Everett's offer. Freedom. The word itself made her heart race. During her midday break, she sat alone under a tree, away from the others. She hadn't told anyone about Everett's plan. The fewer people who knew, the safer they would all be. "There you are," a voice said. Mercy looked up to see Ida, the oldest of the house slaves. Ida had been with the Belmont family for over 40 years and knew all their secrets. "Mrs. Belmont is asking for you," Ida said, her face giving nothing away. "She wants you in the parlor now." Mercy's stomach tightened with fear. Had Eleanor somehow found out about her meeting with Everett? "Did she say why?" Mercy asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "No," Ida replied, "but Mr. Preston is there too." Mercy felt the blood drain from her face. Preston, the man who wanted to buy her. "Better not keep them waiting," Ida warned, helping Mercy to her feet. As Mercy turned to go, Ida grabbed her arm and whispered, "Be careful, child, that man has a bad reputation." With trembling legs, Mercy made her way to the main house. She paused at the parlor door, took a deep breath and knocked softly. "Enter," Eleanor's sharp voice commanded. Mercy stepped into the room. Eleanor sat stiffly on the sofa, her face like stone. Next to her was a tall, thin man with cold eyes and an expensive suit. Mr. Preston. "Ah, here she is," Preston said, standing up. He walked around Mercy slowly, examining her like she was a horse for sale. "Turn around, girl." Mercy looked at Eleanor, who nodded curtly. Slowly, Mercy turned in a circle. "Good posture," Preston noted. "Healthy. How old are you?" 23, sir," Mercy answered quietly. "Perfect." Preston smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "And this voice I've heard so much about. Perhaps a demonstration?" "That won't be necessary," a new voice said. Everyone turned to see Everett standing in the doorway, his face tight with anger. "Everett," Eleanor said sharply, "this doesn't concern you." "I disagree, Mother," Everett replied, walking into the room. "Father asked me to oversee all business transactions in his absence." Preston low. Okayed between mother and son, clearly sensing the tension. "Your father has already agreed to my offer," Preston said smoothly. $1,500 is more than generous for a field hand, even one with special talents. "My father may have agreed," Everett said coldly, "but the final papers haven't been signed, and they won't be, at least not today." Eleanor stood up, her face flushed with anger. "Everett, stop this nonsense at once. Your father will be furious." "Let him be furious," Everett replied. "Mr. Preston, I apologize for the confusion, but this sale cannot proceed today. Perhaps you could return next week when my father is home from his business trip." Preston's pleasant mask slipped for a moment, revealing something dark and dangerous beneath, but he quickly recovered his smile. "Of course," he said. "Business should always be conducted properly. I'll return on Friday next week. But I must insist that the price remains as agreed." "We shall see," Everett said firmly. "Jenkins will show you out." After Preston had gone, Eleanor turned on her son. "How dare you interfere? Your father will hear about this the moment he returns." "Good," Everett replied, "because I have quite a few things to tell him as well, like how you tried to sell one of our most valuable workers without proper consideration." "Valuable?" Eleanor laughed bitterly. "She's just a field hand who got lucky with a pretty voice." "She's more than that," Everett said quietly. "And you know it. That's why you're so eager to get rid of her." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "What exactly are you implying?" "Nothing, Mother," Everett said. "Mercy, you can return to your duties now." Mercy, who had been standing silently through this exchange, quickly left the room. As she closed the door behind her, she heard Eleanor's voice rise in anger again. Out in the hallway, she leaned against the wall, trying to calm her racing heart. Everett had bought her time, but Preston would be back. She had 1 week to decide: stay and face whatever fate awaited her with Preston, or risk everything for a chance at freedom. That night, Mercy slipped out of the slave quarters once more. The moon was hidden behind clouds, making it harder to find her way to the old oak tree. When she arrived, Everett was already waiting. "I heard what happened with Preston," Mercy said as she approached. Everett nodded grimly. "I could only delay him. He'll be back next Friday." "Then we don't have much time," Mercy said quietly. She had made her decision. "I want to go. I want to be free." Relief washed over Everett's face. "I've made arrangements. 2 days from now, a friend will meet you at the north end of the property with a wagon. He'll take you to the next safe house see." "What about you?" Mercy asked. "Won't they suspect you helped me?" "I'll create a distraction," Everett explained. "There's to be a dinner party that night. In the confusion, no one will notice you're gone until it's too late." Mercy nodded, trying to be brave despite her fear. "What should I bring?" "Nothing that would make you stand out," Everett advised. "Plain clothes, a little food, travel light and fast." From his pocket, Everett pulled out a SM-all leather-bound notebook. "Take this," he said, pressing it into her hands. "Write your songs here. No one should silence your voice again." Mercy stared at the gift, overwhelmed. "I can't accept this." "Please," Everett insisted. "So you'll remember." Remember him, he meant. Mercy felt something shift inside her heart. "I didn't sing for them that night," she said softly. "I sang for myself." Everett smiled. "I know. That's why it broke them." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of what they were planning hanging between them. "Mercy," Everett finally said, his voice low and serious, "there's something else you should know. The journey north is dangerous. If you're caught—" "I know the risks," Mercy interrupted, "but staying here, being sold to Preston, that's its own kind of death." Everett nodded. "You're brave. Braver than anyone I've ever known." "Not brave," Mercy corrected him, "just desperate for a different life." As they finalized their plans, neither noticed the figure watching from the shadows of the nearby trees. Lily, the kitchen maid, had followed Mercy out of curiosity. Now she slipped away, her mind racing with what she had just overheard. The next morning, Mercy went about her duties as usual, trying not to act differently. But her heart wasn't in her work. Her mind kept wandering to what lay ahead, the journey, the dangers, the possibility of a new life. Around midday, she was called to the kitchen to help prepare for the upcoming dinner party. As she entered, she immediately sensed something was wrong. Lily wouldn't meet her eyes, and Ida kept giving her worried glances. "What's happened?" Mercy asked quietly when she and Ida were alone. The older woman sighed heavily. "Lily overheard you and Mr. Everett last night. She told Mrs. Belmont everything this morning." Mercy felt the floor drop away beneath her feet. "Everything?" Ida nodded grimly. "The escape plan, the wagon, all of it. Mrs. Belmont was furious. She's locked Mr. Everett in his room and sent for Mr. Belmont to return early from his trip." "And me?" Mercy whispered, already knowing the answer. "She's called for Jenkins to watch you and—" Ida hesitated. "What?" Mercy pressed. "She sent a message to Mr. Preston. He's coming tomorrow instead of next week." Merkwai sank onto a nearby stool, her legs unable to hold her any longer. Everything was falling apart. "What about the dinner party?" she asked. "Cancelled," Ida replied. "Mrs. Belmont told everyone Mr. Everett has taken ill." Just then, the kitchen door swung open, and Jenkins walked in, his face set in a cruel smile. "There you are," he said to Mercy. "Mrs. Belmont wants you confined to the storage shed until tomorrow. Can't have you running off before your new master arrives." Mercy looked desperately at Ida, but there was nothing the older woman could do. With heavy steps, Mercy followed Jenkins out to the small wooden shed where tools and seed were kept. "Enjoy your last night at Belmont Estate," Jenkins sneered as he locked the door. "I hear Mr. Preston runs a tight ship for his performers." Alone in the dark, musty shed, Mercy finally let her tears fall. All her hopes for freedom dashed in an instant. And Everett, what would happen to him? His parents would never forgive him for trying to help a slave escape. As night fell, the temperature dropped. Mercy huddled in a corner, wrapping her thin shawl tightly around her shoulders. She thought of the notebook Everett had given her, hidden beneath her mattress in the slave quarters. She would never get to use it now. Suddenly she heard a soft scratching at the shed door, then a whisper, "Mercy, are you in the air?" It was Everett's voice. "Yes," she whispered back, rushing to the door. "How did you get out?" "Bribed the houseboy to unlock my door," he replied. "Stand back, I'm going to break the lock." Mercy heard a metallic snap, and then the door swung open. Everett stood there, his face bruised on one side. "What happened to you?" Mercy gasped. "My father returned early," Everett explained grimly. "We had a disagreement about your sale." "A disagreement?" Mercy reached out instinctively to touch his bruised face, then pulled her hand back. "It doesn't matter," Everett said. "What matters is getting you away from here. Now." "But the plan has changed," Everett finished for her. "My friend with the wagon is waiting by the creek, not the Northfield. We need to hurry." "We," Mercy repeated. Everett met her eyes in the darkness. "I'm coming with you, at least to the first safe house. After what happened today, I can't stay here either." The weight of what he was saying hit Mercy hard. Everett was giving up everything, his home, his inheritance, his position, to help her escape. "You can't," she protested. "It's too much to sacrifice." "It's my choice," Everett said firmly. "Now, we need to move before someone notices I'm gone." Together, they slipped through the darkness, avoiding the paths where the night watchmen patrolled. Everett led the way, guiding Mercy T, Farrow Field she had worked in but never seen at night. The moon emerged from behind the clouds, casting a silver light over the landscape. Mercy could see the creek up ahead, and beside it, a small covered wagon with a single horse. "Almost there," Everett whispered encouragingly. Suddenly a voice called out behind them, "Stop right there!" They turned to see Jenkins and two other men approaching quickly, lanterns in hand. "Run!" Everett shouted, grabbing young Mercy's hand. They sprinted toward the creek, but the men were gaining on them. Just as they reached the wagon, Jenkins caught up to them, grabbing Mercy's arm and yanking her backward. "Let her go," Everett demanded, throwing himself at Jenkins. The two men fell to the ground, struggling. The other men joined the fight, and soon Everett was outnumbered. "Go, Mercy!" Everett shouted between blows. "Get in the wagon and go!" The driver of the wagon, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, reached out his hand to Mercy. "Come on, girl. We don't have much time." Mercy looked back at Everett, still fighting despite the odds. She couldn't leave him. Making a split-second decision, Mercy grabbed a fallen branch and swung it hard at one of the men attacking Everett. The man fell back, stunned. Seeing his opportunity, Everett broke free from Jenkins and ran to the wagon. "Drive!" he yelled to his friend as he pulled Mercy into the wagon beside him. The wagon lurched forward, picking up speed as it followed the creek bed away from Belmont Estate. Behind them, Jenkins and his men shouted and fired a warning shot into the air. "They'll follow us," Mercy said, her voice shaking. "Not where we're going," Everett's friend called back. "I know these woods better than anyone. We'll lose them before dawn." As the wagon bounced along the rough path, Mercy looked at Everett. In the moonlight, his face was determined despite his injuries. "Why?" she asked simply. "Why risk everything for me?" Everett was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because your voice woke something in me I didn't know was still alive." "My voice?" Mercy asked, confused. "Not just your singing," Everett explained. "The truth in it, the courage. My whole life I've lived in a world of lies and cruelty, pretending it was normal. Then you sang and I couldn't pretend anymore." The wagon continued through the night, traveling deeper into the woods. Mercy felt a strange mixture of terror and hope. They had escaped, but for how long? And what waited for them ahead? As if reading her thoughts, Everett took her hand. "We'll be all right," he promised. "The first safe house is about 10 miles from here. We should reach it by morning." "And then?" Mercy asked. "One step at a time," Everett said. "But I promise you this. You'll never be anyone's property again." As the night wore on, Mercy finally allowed herself to believe it might be true. Freedom, not just from slavery, but freedom to use her voice, to to be herself, to choose her own path. She thought of the notebook Everett had given her, left behind in her hurry to escape. But perhaps it was better that way. She didn't need to write her songs anymore. She could sing them aloud for anyone who wanted to hear. The first light of dawn was breaking when the wagon finally stopped beside a small farmhouse hidden among the trees. An elderly black man stepped out onto the porch, nodding at Everett's friend. "You made it," he said simply. "Come inside, quickly. You'll be safe here for now." As Mercy stepped down from the wagon, her legs stiff from the long ride, she paused to look back in the direction they had come. Belmont Estate was far behind them now, but the memory of it would always be with her. "Ready?" Everett asked, offering his hand. Mercy took a deep breath of the morning air, her first breath as a free woman. Then she took his hand and nodded. "Yes," she said. "I'm ready." Back at Belmont Estate, chaos reigned. Charles Belmont paced the parlor furiously, while Eleanor sat rigid in her chair, her face pale with shock. "How could this happen?" Charles demanded of Jenkins, who stood before them, hat in hand. "How could you let them escape?" "We tried to stop them, sir," Jenkins explained nervously, "but they had help. A wagon was waiting." "And my son?" Charles asked, his voice dangerous. "My own son helped a slave escape?" "Yes, sir," Jenkins confirmed. "He went with her." Eleanor let out a small sob, quickly stifled behind her handkerchief. "Find them," Charles ordered. "I don't care what it costs. Find my son and bring him home. And that girl—" His face darkened. He'll regret the day she ever opened her mouth to sing in this house. At that moment, there was a knock at the front door. A servant entered the parlor a moment later. "Mr. Preston is here, sir," the servant announced. "He says he has an appointment regarding the purchase of a slave girl." Charles and Eleanor exchanged a look of dread. How would they explain to Preston that the slave he had come to buy and the son of the house had both vanished in the night? The safe house was small but clean, with a hidden cellar where runaways could hide if danger approached. The elderly man, who introduced himself as Solomon, showed Mercy to a tiny bedroom while Everett and the wagon driver, a man named Jacob, discussed their next move. "You'll stay here 3 days," Solomon explained to Mercy. "Then move on to the next safe house. It's another 2 days' journey from here." "And after that?" Mercy asked. "Pennsylvania," Solomon said with a smile. "Freedom." The word still didn't seem real to Mercy. She sat on the edge of the narrow bed, trying to process everything that had happened. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Everett entered, carrying a small bundle. "Jacob is heading back," he said. "He needs to establish his alibi. But he brought these for you." He handed her the bundle. Mercy unwrapped it to find a simple dress, sturdier than her slave clothes, and a pair of worn but solid shoes. "Free women don't go barefoot," Everett said with a small smile. Mercy ran her fingers over the fabric, overwhelmed by the simple gift. "Thank you," she whispered. "There's something else," Everett said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out the leather notebook he had given her. Mercy gasped. "How did you get this? I left it under my mattress." "Jacob went to the quarters before coming to meet us," Everett explained. "I asked him to look for it." Tears filled Mercy's eyes as she took the notebook. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Everett replied. "Just promise you'll use it." Mercy nodded, clutching the notebook to her chest. "I will." As Everett turned to leave, Mercy called after him. "What happens when we reach Pennsylvania? What will you do?" Everett paused in the doorway. "I haven't thought that far ahead," he admitted, "but I know I can't go back to Belmont Estate. Not after this." "Because of me," Mercy said, guilt in her voice. "You've lost everything because of me." Everett shook his head. "I haven't lost anything worth keeping. The money, the position, the family name, none of it matters if it's built on the suffering of others." He looked at her, his eyes sincere. "For the first time in my life, I'm doing something that feels right. Whatever comes next, I won't regret this choice." As he closed the door behind him, Mercy opened the notebook. On the first page, Everett had written a message. "Your voice is yours alone, let it be heard." Mercy smiled through her tears. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, new challenges. But tonight, in this small room, she was free. and her voice, the voice they had tried to silence, was finally her own. 3 days passed quickly at Solomon's farm. Mercy spent most of her time inside, afraid to show her face in case anyone from Belmont Estate came looking for her. Everett helped Solomon with chores around the property, earning their keep while they waited for the signal to move on. On the morning of the 4th day, Solomon entered the small kitchen where Mercy was helping prepare breakfast. "A rider came in the night," he announced. "The next safe house is ready for you. You'll leave after dark." Mercy nodded, her stomach tightening with a mixture of fear and excitement. Each step north took her closer to true freedom, but also meant new dangers. "Who will take us?" she asked. "No one," Solomon replied. "You and Mr. Everett will go alone. Fewer people, less chance of being noticed." "Alone?" Mercy repeated, alarmed. "But we don't know the way." "I've drawn a map," Solomon assured her, "and the North Star will guide you. 2 days' journey, following the river. You can't miss it." Later, as Mercy packed a few belongings she had acquired, the dress and shoes from Jacob and Everett's notebook, she heard raised voices from the front room. Curious, she moved closer to her door to listen. "It's too dangerous," Everett was saying. "They'll be looking for us on all the main routes." "Which is why you'll take the river path," Solomon replied calmly. "No one uses it this time of year. The water's too high." "That's what worries me," Everett argued. "Mercy can't him." There was a pause, then Solomon's voice again. "Sometimes the most dangerous path is the safest, because no one expects you to take it." Mercy stepped back from the door, her heart racing. The river path, She had heard stories about runaways who drowned trying to follow the river north. But Solomon was right. No one would expect them to go that way. That evening, as the sun began to set, Mercy and Everett prepared to leave. Solomon had packed them a new G-food for 3 days, though the journey should only take 2. "Just in case," he explained. "Weather can turn quick this time of year." He handed Everett a small pistol. "For emergencies only," he warned. "Gunshots draw attention." Everett nodded, tucking the weapon into his belt. His face was grim, determined. "One more thing," Solomon said, turning to Mercy. From a shelf, he took down a small cloth bundle. "This belonged to my wife. She'd want you to have it." Mercy unwrapped the bundle to find a simple silver locket on a chain. "It's not worth much," Solomon said. "But where you're going, you might need something to trade if you get in trouble." "I can't take this," Mercy protested. "It's too precious." Solomon shook his head. "My Martha's been gone 10 years. She'd be happy knowing it helped another woman find freedom." With tears in her eyes, Mercy put the locket around her neck, tucking it beneath her dress. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." As darkness fell completely, Mercy and Everett said their goodbyes to Solomon and set off into the night. The path he had shown them led through dense woods, following a stream that would eventually join the river. They walked in silence, both aware that sound carried at night. Everett led the way, occasionally reaching back to help Mercy over fallen logs or slippery rocks. The moon was nearly full, providing enough light to see the path. After about 2 hours of walking, they reached the river. It was wider than Mercy had expected, the water moving swiftly in the center, though calmer near the edges. "We follow it north," Everett said quietly, consulting the crude map Solomon had drawn. "There's a crossing about 5 miles upstream, where the water is shallower." Mercy nodded, too tired to speak. Her feet had shed in her new shoes, which hadn't yet molded to her feet, but she didn't complain. Every step took her further from slavery and closer to freedom. They continued along the riverbank, the path sometimes disappearing completely, forcing them to climb over rocks or push through thick underbrush. By midnight, Mercy was exhausted. "We need to rest," Everett said, noticing her fatigue. "There's a small clearing ahead. We can stop there until dawn." The clearing G was little more than a flat spot between the river and the forest, but it offered enough space to sit and eat some of the food Solomon had packed. Mercy sank down gratefully, stretching her sore legs. "You should sleep," Everett told her. "I'll keep watch." "What about you?" Mercy asked. "You need rest too." "I'll wake you in a few hours," he promised. "We'll take turns." Too tired to argue, Mercy lay down on the soft grass, using her small bundle of clothes as a pillow. Despite her exhaustion, sleep didn't come easily. Every sound in the forest made her tense, afraid it might be pursuers from Belmont Estate. Finally, she turned to Everett, who sat nearby, his back against a tree. "Tell me about Pennsylvania," she said softly. "What's it like there?" Everett smiled in the moonlight. "I've only been once with my father on business. But it's different from the South. The cities are bigger, busier. There are refactories instead of plantations. And black people are free there?" Mercy asked. "Yes," Everett nodded, "though they still face prejudice. But there are communities where former slaves have built new lives. My friend Jacob told me about one near Philadelphia. That's where we're headed." "What will you do there?" Mercy asked the question that had been on her mind for days. Everett was quiet for a moment. "I have some money saved," he finally said. "You know, how to start something small, maybe a store." "And me?" Mercy asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What will I do?" Everett looked at her, his face serious in the dim light. "Whatever you want, Mercy. That's what freedom means. You could sing if you wanted to. Your voice is too beautiful to be silenced." Mercy thought about that. Singing for herself, not because she was ordered to. Singing songs of her own choosing. It seemed like an impossible dream. "I'd like that," she admitted. "But I don't know if I'd be brave enough." "You're the bravest person I've ever known," Everett said. "You escaped slavery. After that, singing on a stage would be easy." Mercy smiled at his confidence in her. "Maybe we could work together," she suggested hesitantly. "You could run the business part and I could sing." "I'd like that," Everett said, smiling back. "Very much." Something passed between them in that moment, a S-haired hope, a future neither had dared imagine before. Mercy felt her cheeks warm, and she looked away, back toward the river. "You should sleep now," Everett said gently. "We have a long day tomorrow." This time Mercy fell asleep quickly, comforted by Everett's presence and the promise of what might lie ahead. Back at Belmont Estate, the search for Mercy and Everett continued. Charles Belmont had hired professional slave catchers, offering a substantial reward for his son's return. "And the girl?" the lead slave catcher had asked. "Bring her back alive if possible," Charles had replied coldly. "But I care more about getting my son home." Preston had been furious when he learned of Mercy's escape. He had demanded his travel expenses be reimbursed and had threatened legal action against the Belmonts for breach of contract. "You promised me a singing slave," he had shouted at Charles. "I came all this way for nothing." To keep the peace and to avoid a scandal. Charles had paid Preston double his expenses. It was a small price to avoid having the story spread through Charleston society. But Eleanor was less concerned with Preston than with the damage to their family name. Her son running off with a slave girl. The scandal was unbearable. "We should say he's traveling abroad," she suggested to Charles. "No one needs to know the truth." "And when he's found," Charles demanded. "What then?" Eleanor's face hardened. "When he's found, we'll send him north to your brother in Boston. Let him cool his heels there until this blows over." "And the girl?" Eleanor's voice was ice. "She'll be sold, immediately, to someone far away who will keep her too busy to ever sing again." Charles nodded in agreement. The Belmont name had to be protected no matter the cost. Dawn broke clear and cool over the river. Mercy woke to Effie, and Everett already up, studying Solomon's map. "We should reach the crossing by midday," he told her. "Then it's another day's walk to the next safe house." They ate a quick breakfast of hard bread and dried meat, then continued their journey, following the river as it wound northward. The path grew steeper as the morning wore on, the terrain more challenging. By midday, as Everett had predicted, they reached the crossing. The river narrowed here, flowing over a bed of rocks that created a natural ford. Still, the water looked deep in places. "It's higher than I expected," Everett said, frowning. "The spring rains must have swelled it." "Can we cross?" Mercy asked anxiously. Everett studied the water for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, but carefully. The current is strong in the middle." He took off his boots and rolled up his trousers. Mercy removed her shoes as well, tying them around her neck with a piece of string. "Hold on to me," Everett instructed, offering his hand. "And if you slip, don't panic." I won't let you go." Mercy nodded, gripping his hand tightly. Together they stepped into the water. It was shockingly cold, numbing Mercy's feet almost instantly. The rocks beneath were slippery with moss, making each step treacherous. As they moved deeper, the water rose to Mercy's knees, then her thighs. By the time they reached the middle of the river, it was up to her waist, the current pulling strongly at her body. "Almost there," Everett encouraged, his grip on her hand firm. Just then, Mercy's foot slipped on a rock. She gasped as she fell forward into the rushing water. Everett's hand was torn from hers by the force of the current. "Everett!" she cried as the water pulled her downstream. "Mercy!" he shouted, lunging after her. The cold water closed over Mercy's head. She flailed desperately, trying to in something to grab onto. Her lungs burned for air. Just as panic threatened to overwhelm her, her hand struck something solid, a tree branch hanging low over the water. She grabbed it with both hands, pulling herself up until her head broke the surface. Gasping for air, she looked around frantically for Everett. He was swimming toward her, fighting the current with powerful strokes. Relief flooded through her as he reached the branch, his hand closing over hers. "Hold on," he panted. "I'll pull you to shore." Together, they inched along the branch until they reached the riverbank. Everett climbed out first, then helped Mercy onto solid ground. They collapsed side by side on the grass, soaked and shivering but alive. "Are you all right?" Everett asked when he'd caught his breath. Mercy nodded, too exhausted to speak. Then she remembered her bundle of clothes, the food Solomon had given them, Everett's map, all washed away in the river. "Everything's gone," she said, sitting up in alarm. Everett checked his own pockets. The pistol was still there, but everything else had been lost in the crossing. "Not everything," he said, trying to sound confident. "We still have our shoes, and we know the direction north following the river." Mercy's hand went to her throat. To her surprise, Solomon's locket was still there, the chain secure around her neck. "And this," she said, showing Everett. "We have this." He smiled, some of the tension leaving his face. "See, we're not completely without resources." But as they sat there, the spring breeze cutting through their wet clothes, Mercy couldn't help but worry. They had no food, no map, and no dry clothes, and they were still at least a day's journey from the next safe house. "We need to keep moving," Everett said, standing up. "We'll warm up faster walking, and we need to put more distance between us and anyone who might be following." Mercy nodded, getting to her feet. Her dress clung to her, heavy with water. She wrung out as much as she could, then put on her shoes, which thankfully had stayed dry. They set off again, following the river. Without the map, they could only hope they were still on the right path. The afternoon sun helped dry their clothes somewhat, but as evening approached, the temperature began to drop. "We need shelter for the night," Everett said, looking at the darkening sky. "And a fire if we can make one safely." They found a small cave in the rocky hillside, not far from the river. It was barely big enough for both of them, but it would provide protection from the wind and any rain that might come. Everett gathered wood, while Mercy cleared a space inside the cave. Using rocks and dry moss, Everett managed to start a small fire at the cave entrance. "It's not much," he apologized, "but it will help keep us warm." They sat close to the fire, their bodies near enough to share warmth without touching. Mercy's stomach growled loudly, reminding her they hadn't eaten since breakfast. "I could try to catch fish," Everett suggested. "In the morning, when there's light." Mercy nodded, too tired and hungry to speak much. The events of the day, the river crossing, nearly drowning, losing their supplies, had dry-ned her completely. As darkness fell, the temperature dropped further. Despite the small fire, Mercy couldn't stop shivering. "Come closer," Everett said. "We need to share body heat." Hesitantly, Mercy moved next to him. Everett put his arm around her shoulders, drawing her against his side. Gradually, her shivering subsided. "Thank you," she murmured, "for saving me in the river. For everything." "I should be thanking you," Everett replied quietly. "Before I heard you sing that night, my life had no purpose. I knew the things my family did were wrong, but I did nothing to stop them. I was a coward." "You're not a coward," Mercy said firmly. You risked everything to help me. Because you showed me what courage looks like, Everett said. Your voice that night, it wasn't just beautiful, it was defiant. In that moment, surrounded by people who saw you as property, you claimed your humanity in a way none of them could deny. Mercy had never thought of her singing that way. She had simply opened her mouth and let out what was in her heart. I was terrified, she admitted. I thought they would punish me. Instead, you changed everything, Everett said, at least for me. In the flickering firelight, their eyes met. Slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, Everett leaned closer. His lips touched hers, gentle and questioning. Mercy had never been kissed before. For a moment she froze, unsure how to respond. Then, following her instincts, she kissed him back, her hand coming up to rest against his cheek. When they parted, both were breathing faster. Everett looked at her with wonder, and something deeper that made Mercy's heart race. I'm sorry, he said. I shouldn't have. Don't be sorry, Mercy interrupted. I'm not. He smiled, relief washing over his face. Mercy, he began, but was cut off by a sound outside the cave. They both tensed, listening. Footsteps moving through the underbrush, then voices, low and urgent. Check over there, a man's voice ordered. They can't have gone far. Slave catchers. They had been found. Everett quickly kicked dirt over their small fire, extinguishing it. In the sudden darkness, he pulled Mercy deeper into the cave. Stay absolutely still, he whispered, his mouth close to her ear. Maybe they'll pass by. Mercy nodded, though he couldn't see it. Her heart hammered so loudly in her chest, she was sure it would give them away. The footsteps came closer. A beam of light, a lantern, swept across the cave entrance. Hey, over here, a voice called. I found something. Everett's hand went to the pistol at his belt. Mercy grabbed his arm. No, she whispered. There are too many. They'll kill you. I won't let them take you back, Everett said fiercely. There's a not her way, Mercy said, an idea forming suddenly in her mind. Do you trust me? With my life, Everett replied without hesitation. Then follow my lead, Mercy said, and before he could stop her, she stepped toward the cave entrance. We're here, she called out. Don't shoot. We're coming out. Mercy, no, Everett hissed, but it was too late. The lantern light blinded them as they emerged from the cave. 3 men stood there, pistols drawn. Mercy recognized one of them, Jenkins' brother-in-law, a man named Harris, who sometimes worked as an overseer at Belmont Estate. Well, well, Harris said with a cold smile. Look what we found. Mr. Belmont will be mighty pleased. Please, Mercy said, her voice trembling appropriately. Don't hurt us. It wasn't my idea to run. Mr. Everett made me come with him. She felt Everett stiffen beside her, but he said nothing. Harris looked skeptical. Made you? How's that? He said he'd sell me to Mr. Preston if I didn't go with him, Mercy continued, the lie coming easily. Said Mr. Preston would hurt me bad. I was scared. One of the other men snorted. Likely story. Every runaway has an excuse. It's true, Mercy insisted, allowing tears to fill her eyes. I never wanted to leave. Belmont Estate is my home. She could feel Everett's confusion and hurt beside her, but she squeezed his hand, hoping he would understand her plan. Harris studied them both, then nodded to his companions. Bind them. We'll take them back in the morning. As one of the men approached with rope, Mercy whispered to Everett, Trust me. Please. The look he gave her was full of questions, but he nodded slightly. He understood there was a plan, even if he didn't know what it was. The men bound their hands in front of them and tied them to a tree near the cave. Harris set up a small camp nearby, making it clear that escape was impossible. Get some sleep, he told his companions. We've got a long journey back tomorrow. As the men settled in for the night, Mercy leaned close to Everett. I'm sorry, she whispered. I had to make them think I was cooperating. What's your plan? Everett asked, his voice barely audible. Mercy glanced at the slave catchers. 2 were already asleep. Harris was keeping watch, but his eyes were drooping. Solomon's locked tea, she whispered. Help me get it off. Understanding dawned in Everett's eyes. With their hands bound together, he was able to reach the clasp of the necklace and undo it. The silver locket fell into Mercy's palm. "When he falls asleep," she murmured, "I'll offer it to him. Say it's payment if he'll let us go." "He won't take it," Everett said doubtfully. "The reward for us is much greater." "Not for us," Mercy corrected. "For you. You're the prize they want. I'm just a runaway slave, not worth much to them." Everett's eyes widened as he understood. "No, absolutely not. I won't leave you." "You have to," Mercy insisted. "Get to the safe house. Bring help back for me." "It's too dangerous," Everett argued. "What if they hurt you? What if they take you back to Belmont Estate before I can return?" "It's our only chance," Mercy said firmly. "Better one of us reaches freedom than neither." Before Everett could argue further, they noticed Harris's head drop to his chest. He was asleep. "Now," Mercy whispered. Carefully, making as little noise as possible, she called out softly, "Mr. Harris? Sir?" Harris jerked awake, his hand going to his pistol. "What?" he demanded. "I need to speak with you," Mercy said. Privately, suspicious, Harris approached them, staying just out of reach. "What is it?" Mercy opened her palm, revealing the silver locket. "I'll make a deal with you," she said. "Let Mr. Everett go, and I'll go back to Belmont Estate without trouble. Plus, you can have this, it's real silver." Harris picked up the locket, examining it in the moonlight. "Why would I let either of you go when I can take you both back and get the full reward?" "Because Mr. Everett is the one who knows the way to the safe houses," Mercy said quickly. "If you let him go, he can lead more runaways into your traps. Think of all the reward money then." She could feel Everett's shocked stare, but didn't look at him. Harris considered this, turning the locket over in his hand. "And why would he do that? Lead others to be caught?" "Because you'll have me," Mercy said. "And he cares what happens to me." Harris laughed. "You expect me to believe the master's son cares about a slave girl?" "You saw us together," Mercy pointed out. "Why else would he risk everything to help me escape?" Harris looked between them, realization dawning on his face. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. Then to Everett, "Is that true? You sweet on this girl?" Everett's voice was tight with anger and fear. "Let her go instead. Take me back. I'm worth more to my father." "See," Mercy said to Harris, "he cares what happens to me." "So do we have a deal? Him free, me back to Belmont, and you get the locket." Harris thought for a long moment, then smiled unpleasantly. "No deal. I'm taking you both back, but I'll keep this pretty trinket as a bonus." He pocketed the locket and returned to his place by the fire, making sure to stay awake this time. Mercy's heart sank. Her plan had failed. Tomorrow, they would be taken back to Belmont Estate. What would happen then? Everett would likely be sent away, and she would be sold to Preston, or someone worse. "I'm sorry," she whispered to Everett. "I tried." "It was a good plan," he whispered back. "And, Mercy, what you said about me caring for you, that wasn't just part of the trick, was it?" In the darkness, Mercy found his hand and squeezed it. "No," she said softly. That part was true. Everett's fingers intertwined with hers. "Then we'll find another way," he promised. "This isn't over." As they sat there, bound to the tree, Mercy began to hum softly, a melody that had been forming in her mind during their journey. It was a song of hope and determination, of the freedom they had tasted briefly and would find again. Harris looked over sharply. Quiet, but Mercy continued to hum, the music giving her strength. Whatever happened tomorrow, they had shared this journey. They had known freedom, however briefly, and most importantly, they had found each other. As the night wore on, Mercy allowed herself to lean against Everett's shoulder. Despite their bound hands and the uncertainty ahead, she eventually drifted into an uneasy sleep. Her last thought before succumbing to exhaustion was a promise to herself. This would not be the end of their story. Somehow, someday, she would sing freely again, and Everett would be there to hear it. Dawn broke with a light drizzle, the grey sky matching Mercy's mood. Harris and his men were already up, packing their small camp and preparing for the journey back to Belmont Estate. "On your feet," Harris ordered, Cutting the rope that bound Mercy and Everett to the tree, he left their hands tied in front of them. "We've got a long walk ahead." Mercy's legs were stiff from sitting against the tree all night. She stumbled as she tried to stand, and Everett steadied her with his bound hands. "You all right?" he whispered. She nodded, though in truth she felt far from all right. Their brief taste of freedom was over. Now they faced whatever punishment awaited them back at Belmont Estate. Harris pulled 2 worn blankets from his pack and tossed them to Mercy and Everett. "Cover yourselves. It's going to get colder before it gets warmer." Grateful for even this small kindness, Mercy wrapped the blanket around her shoulders as best she could with her hands tied. They set off, Harris leading the way, Mercy and Everett in the middle, and the other 2 men bringing up the rear. They didn't follow the river as Mercy and Everett had done, but instead cut through the woods on what appeared to be a well-used trail. "How did you find us?" Everett asked after they had been walking for about an hour. Harris glanced back. "Your father hired every slave catcher in 3 counties. We've been searching all the known routes of the Underground Railroad." "And Solomon?" Mercy asked, fearing for the kind old man who had helped them. Harris shrugged. "Don't know any Solomon. We picked up your trail near the river crossing." Mercy exchanged a relieved look with Everett. At least Solomon was safe for now. They walked all morning, stopping only briefly for water and a meager meal of hard bread. By midday, Mercy's feet were blistered in her still new shoes, but she didn't complain. She needed to conserve her strength for whatever lay ahead. As they walked, she noticed Everett studying their surroundings carefully, his eyes alert. She knew he was looking for an opportunity to escape, but with 3 armed men watching them closely, their chances seemed slim. "Don't even think about it," Harris warned, noticing Everett's wandering gaze. "I get paid the same, whether I bring you back breathing or not." Everett said nothing, but Mercy could feel the tension in him. He wouldn't give up easily. By late afternoon, they had reached a small settlement, little more than a trading post and a few scattered cabins. Harris led them to the largest building, a combination store and tavern. "We'll spend the night here," he announced. "Continue at first light tomorrow." Inside, the tavern was dimly lit and smelled of smoke and stale beer. A few men looked up as they entered, their eyes lingering curiously on Mercy and Everett. Harris spoke quietly to the tavern keeper, who nodded and pointed toward a back room. Harris motioned for Mercy and Everett to follow. The room was small, with a single narrow bed and no windows. Harris cut the ropes binding their wrists, before they could enjoy this freedom. He chained Everett's ankle to a heavy iron ring bolted to the floor. "What about her?" one of the other men asked, nodding toward Mercy. Harris looked her up and down. "She's not going anywhere without him," he said dismissively. "Lock the door when you leave." When they were alone, Everett immediately examined the chain on his ankle and the ring in the floor. Both were solid. "There has to be a way out," he muttered, tugging at the chain. "Even if you got free of that, there are 3 armed men outside," Mercy pointed out. "And we don't know where we are." Everett sat heavily on the edge of the bed. "I can't let them take you back," he said, his voice breaking. "My father will sell you to Preston immediately." Mercy sat beside him, taking his hand in hers. "We'll think of something," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. As night fell, they heard the tavern growing busier. Loud voices and occasional bursts of laughter filtered through the thin walls. Mercy's stomach growled, reminding her they hadn't eaten since that small meal at midday. As if on cue, the door opened, and a young woman entered, carrying a tray with 2 bowls of stew and a pitcher of water. She set it down on the small table without meeting their eyes. "Thank you," Mercy said. The woman glanced up, surprised to be addressed. She was about Mercy's age, with tired eyes and calloused hands. "You're welcome," she replied softly. As she turned to leave, she hesitated. "Is it true what they're saying? That you're runaways?" Everett nodded. "I'm Everett Belmont. This is Mercy. We were trying to reach Pennsylvania." The woman's eyes widened. "Belmont? As in Belmont Estate? You're the master's son?" "Yes," Everett confirmed. "And Mercy was a slave there. We're trying to reach freedom." The woman looked at them with new interest. "I'm Sarah," she said. "My brother Tom works here. He helps people sometimes. people heading north. Mercy felt a flicker of hope. Could he help us? Sarah bit her lip, clearly conflicted. Those men out there, they're dangerous, and they're being paid a lot to bring you back. Please, Mercy said, stepping closer to Sarah. If they take us back, I'll be sold away, and Everett will be sent north without me. We'll never see each other again. Sarah looked between them, understanding dawning in her eyes. You love each other, she said simply. Mercy glanced at Everett, then back at Sarah. Yes, she admitted. We do. Sarah nodded as if making up her mind. Eat your food. I'll talk to Tom, but I can't promise anything. After she left, locking the door behind her, Mercy and Everett ate the stew hungrily. It was simple fare, mostly potatoes and a little meat, but to them it tasted wonderful. Did you mean what you said? Everett asked as they finished eating. About loving me? Mercy looked at him, surprised by the question. Yes, she said. I wouldn't have said it otherwise. A smile spread across Everett's face. I love you too, he said. I think I have since the first time I heard you sing. Mercy felt warmth spread through her chest, despite their dire situation. She moved closer to him on the bed, and he wrapped his arms around her. Whatever happens, he promised, I won't give up. If they separate us, I'll find you again. Mercy rested her head on his shoulder, drawing strength from his presence. I believe you, she said. They sat like that for a long time, talking quietly about the future they still hoped to have. Eventually, exhaustion overcame them, and they fell asleep holding each other. A soft knock woke them in the darkest part of the night. Mercy sat up, instantly alert. The knock came again, followed by the sound of a key in the lock. The door opened to reveal Sarah and a tall, broad-shouldered man who looked so much like her they had to be siblings. This is Tom, Sarah whispered. He's going to help you. Tom approached the bed, kneeling to examine the chain on Everett's ankle. From his pocket, he produced a small metal tool. Lockpicking's a useful skill in my line of work, he explained, as he watched out on the lock. Your friends are all passed out drunk in the main room, been buying them drinks all night. After a few tense moments, the lock clicked open. Everett rubbed his ankle, relief washing over his face. Thank you, he said to Tom, but they'll know you helped us. Tom smiled grimly. That's why Sarah and I are coming with you. Been wanting to head north anyway. This place is getting too dangerous for people in our line of work. How far to the next safe house? Mercy asked. About 10 miles, Tom replied. My wagon's out back. We can be there before dawn if we hurry. Sarah handed them each a bundle of clothes. Change into these, she said. Leave your old ones here. The clothes were plain but clean, sturdy trousers and a shirt for Everett, a simple dress and shawl for Mercy. They changed quickly, eager to be on their way. Tom led them through the darkened tavern, where Harris and his men W are indeed slumped at tables, empty bottles before them. Outside, a light rain was falling, which would help cover their tracks. A small wagon waited behind the tavern, already loaded with supplies. A single horse stood in the traces, its breath visible in the cool night air. Get in the back, Tom instructed. Stay low and quiet. Mercy and Everett climbed into the wagon, where Sarah was already arranging blankets to hide them. Once they were covered, Tom clicked to the horse and they set off into the night. The journey was uncomfortable, the wagon bouncing over rough roads, but Mercy didn't mind. They were free again, heading north once more. After what seemed like hours, the wagon finally stopped. Tom lifted the blankets. We're here, he whispered. Solomon's friend Jacob is expecting you, Mercy gasped. Jacob? The man who drove us from Belmont Estate? Tom nodded. The very same. The underground railroad has many helpers. They climbed down from the wagon, stiff and sore, but grateful. Before them stood a small farmhouse, a single light burning in the window. The door opened before they could knock, and Jacob stood there, his familiar face breaking into a smile. You made it, he said, clearly relieved. When you didn't arrive as scheduled, we feared the worst. We were captured, Everett explained as they entered the warm house. Tom and Sarah helped Diaz escape. Jacob nodded his thanks to the siblings. You've done a brave thing tonight. There's food and hot coffee ready. After they had eaten and warmed themselves by the fire, Jacob explained the next phase of their journey. You'll leave tomorrow night, he said. There's a group of Quakers who will take you the rest of the way to Philadelphia. You'll be there in 3 days if all goes well. And if Harris and his men come looking for us? Mercy is scared. By the time they wake up and realize you're gone, you'll have a good head start, Jacob assured her. And they don't know about this safe house. Mercy wasn't entirely convinced, but she was too tired to argue. For now, they were safe, and that was enough. The next day passed slowly, with Mercy and Everett confined to the house, while Jacob went about his normal routine to avoid suspicion. Tom and Sarah rested too, preparing for their own journey north. As evening approached, Jacob called them all together. "There's a problem," he announced grimly. "Riders were spotted on the North Road. 3 men matching the description of your captors." Mercy's heart sank. "They found us." "Not yet," Jacob said, "but they're searching the area. We need to change our plans." Instead of waiting for the Quakers, Jacob explained, they would leave immediately. He had a covered wagon with a false bottom where Mercy and Eve Verrett could hide. "What about Tom and Sarah?" Everett asked. "They'll come too," Jacob decided. "It's not safe for any of you to stay here now." Within the hour, they were on the road again. Mercy and Everett lay side by side in the cramped space beneath the wagon's floor, while Tom and Sarah sat up front with Jacob, posing as his niece and nephew. The hiding place was uncomfortable and airless, but Mercy didn't complain. Each mile took them closer to Frey Edom. They had been traveling for about 2 hours when the wagon suddenly stopped. Mercy heard voices, men demanding to know where Jacob was going so late at night. "Taking supplies to my sister in Cooperstown," Jacob replied calmly. "Her husband's taken ill." "Mind if we look in the wagon?" a voice asked. Harris's voice. Mercy held her breath, reaching for Everett's hand in the darkness. "Help yourself," Jacob said, "but be quick about it. I need to reach my sister by morning." Heavy footsteps approached the back of the wagon. Mercy could hear Harris rummaging through the supplies Jacob had deliberately placed on top of the false floor. "What's under here?" Harris asked suddenly. Mercy's heart stopped. Had he found the seam of the hidden compartment? "Just the wagon bed," Jacob replied. "Feel free to look underneath if you don't believe me." There was a pause, then Harris's voice again. "No need. Sorry to targ. You're you, old man. We're looking for a couple of runaways, young man and a colored girl. Haven't seen anyone like that," Jacob said, "but I'll keep an eye out." After what seemed like an eternity, the wagon began moving again. Mercy didn't dare breathe normally until Jacob called down to them that it was safe. "That was close," Everett whispered. "Too close," Mercy agreed. "But we're still free." For the next 2 days they traveled by night and hid during the day. The weather turned colder, with rain that sometimes turned to sleet. But despite the discomfort, Mercy's spirits remained high. They were getting closer to Pennsylvania with each passing hour. On the morning of the 3rd day, Jacob announced they had crossed the state line. They were in Pennsylvania. They were free. Mercy couldn't believe it at first. She emerged from the hiding place and looked around at the unfamiliar landscape. It didn't look okay different from Virginia, and yet everything had changed. "We're really free?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jacob nodded, smiling at her wonder. "Yes, Mercy. In Pennsylvania, you cannot be claimed as a slave. You are a free woman." Tears filled her eyes as the reality sank in. Free. After a lifetime of bondage, she was finally, truly free. Everett wrapped his arms around her, his own eyes damp with emotion. "We made it," he whispered, "just like I promised." That night, they stayed with a family of free black people who were part of a community outside Philadelphia. For the first time, Mercy slept in a real bed, in a room she shared with Sarah, who had become a friend during their journey. "What will you do now?" Sarah asked as they prepared for bed. Mercy considered the question. The future stretched before her, full of possibilities she had never dared imagine before. "Everett talked about opening a store," she said, "and I want to sing. Not for rich white people in parlors, but for myself, for anyone who wants to listen." Sarah smiled. "I'd like to hear you sing someday." "You will," Mercy promised. "Tomorrow, maybe." The next day, Jacob took them into Philadelphia to meet the people who would help them start their new lives. Mercy was overwhelmed by the city, its size, its noise, the sheer number of people hurrying through the streets. At a small office near the docks, they met a Quaker woman named Mrs. Bennet, who had been helping former slaves settle in the city for years. "Mr. Belmont," she greeted Everett with a nod, "your reputation precedes you. Not many plantation heirs would give up everything to help a slave escape." Everett looked uncomfortable with the praise. "I only did what was right," he said. Mrs. Bennet turned to Mercy. "And you must be the young woman with the remarkable voice I've heard about." Mercy was surprised. "You've heard of me?" "Word travels on the Underground Railroad," Mrs. Bennet explained. "Solomon wrote to us about you, said your voice was a gift from heaven itself." Mercy felt her cheeks warm. "I just sing what's in my heart," she said simply. "Well, I have some good news for you both," Mrs. Bennet continued. "There's a small building for rent on Spruce Street. The ground floor would make a fine store, and there are living quarters above. It might suit your needs." Everett looked at Mercy, a question in his eyes. She nodded, excitement building within her. "That sounds perfect," Everett told Mrs. Bennet, "but I'm afraid my funds are limited. I was unable to access my accounts before we left Virginia." "That's been taken care of," Mrs. Bennet said with a smile. "A friend of the cause has provided enough money for 6 months' rent and initial stock for your store. After that, you'll be on your own." Mercy couldn't believe their luck. "Who would do such a thing for strangers?" she asked. "Not everyone with money supports slavery," Mrs. Bennet replied. "There are many in the North who work quietly to help those seeking freedom." That afternoon they went to see the building. It was modest but clean, with a large front room perfect for a store and 3 small rooms upstairs for living quarters. "What do you think?" Everett asked as they stood in the empty store space. "Could this be home?" Mercy looked around, trying to imagine it filled with goods, customers coming and going. Upstairs would be their private space, a home of their own. "Yes," she said, her heart full. "This could definitely be home." 6 months later, Belmont General Store was thriving. Everett had a talent for business that surprised even him. He sold quality goods at fair prices and treated all customers with respect, regardless of their color. Mercy helped in the store during the day, but 3 nights a week she sang at a small cafe owned by a free black woman named Josephine. Word of her extraordinary voice had spread quickly, and the cafe was always full on the nights she performed. Tom and Sarah had settled in Philadelphia too. Tom worked on the docks, while Sarah had found employment as a seamstress. They visited often, bringing news and sometimes letters from those still traveling the Underground Railroad. It was through one such letter that Mercy learned Solomon had been forced to flee his farm after Harris and his men connected him to the escaped slaves he had helped. But the old man had made it safely to Canada, where he was living with his nephew. As for Belmont Estate, they heard that Charles had suffered a mild heart attack upon learning of Everett's continued absence. The once proud plantation was struggling financially, with rumors that it might have to be sold. Preston had returned to Charleston, his entertainment business failing after several of his performers had escaped, inspired by stories of Mercy's flight to Fredo M. On a warm evening in early autumn, Mercy stood on the small stage at Josephine's cafe, looking out at the packed room. Familiar faces smiled back at her. Everett in the front row as always, Tom and Sarah at a corner table, Mrs. Bennet and several of the Quakers who had helped them, and dozens of others, both black and white, who had come to hear her sing. She had written a new song, one that had been forming in her mind since that night at Belmont Estate, when she had first revealed her true voice. It was a song about finding freedom, not just from physical chains, but from the fear that had kept her silent for so many years. As she began to sing, her voice filled the room, powerful and pure. She watched Everett's face, saw the love and pride shining in his eyes, and felt a happiness she had never thought possible. This was what freedom meant, the right to use her voice, to love openly, to build a life of her own choosing. After her performance, as the cafe emptied and Josephine began closing up, Everett approached the stage with something hidden behind his back. "You were magnificent tonight," he said, kissing her cheek, "as always." Mercy smiled, basking in his praise. "It's easy to sing when you're truly happy," she replied. "I have something for you," Everett said. bringing his hand forward to reveal a small velvet box. Mercy's breath caught as he opened it. Inside was a silver locket, not Solomon's, which had been lost to Harris, but a new one, more delicate and engraved with her initials. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Open it," Everett urged. Inside was a tiny piece of paper, folded carefully. Mercy unfolded it to find a message written in Everett's neat hand. "Will you marry me?" She looked up at him, tears filling her eyes. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." Everett's face lit up with joy. He took the locket from her and fastened it around her neck, then pulled her into his arms. "I know it won't be easy," he said seriously. "There will be people who disapprove, who try to make our lives difficult. We've faced worse," Mercy reminded him. "And won." Everett smiled. "That's true. And now that Pennsylvania has passed the new marriage law, we can make it legal and proper." The law he referred to, passed just months earlier, allowed marriages between free black people and whites, one of the first such laws in the country. It had given them hope that society might be slowly changing. "When?" Mercy asked, already imagining their wedding day. "Whenever you want," Everett replied. "Tomorrow or next year, it's your choice." Mercy thought for a moment. "Spring," she decided. "When everything is new and growing, that seems right for beginning our life together." Everett nodded, clearly pleased with her choice. Spring it is. As they walked home in the cool evening air, Mercy's hand in Everett's, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. The journey had been long and dangerous, filled with fear and uncertainty, but it had led them here, to this moment, to the future they would build together. Later that night, as Everett slept beside her, Mercy stood by the window of their small bedroom above the store, looking out at the city that had become their home. In the distance, she could just make out the road leading south, back toward Virginia, toward Belmont Estate and everything she had left behind. But she felt no longing for that place, no regret for the life she had escaped. Her hand went to the locket at her throat, a symbol of the love and freedom she had found. Softly, so as not to wake Everett, she began to hum a new melody, a wedding song perhaps, or a lullaby for the children they might someday have. Whatever it was, it came from a place of joy and hope. The voice they had tried to silence had found its true home at last, and it would never be silenced again. 6 years later, Mercy stood in the doorway of their home, watching as Everett played with their 4-year-old daughter Eleanor, named not for his mother but for Mercy's mother, who had died when Mercy was just a child. The little girl had Everett's eyes and Mercy's smile, and a voice that already showed promise of exceptional talent. She sang constantly, making up songs about everything she saw. Belmont General Store had grown into one of the most respected businesses in the neighborhood. They had expanded to the building next door, adding a small music school where Mercy taught singing to children of all colors. Tom and Sarah lived nearby. Tom was now a foreman at the docks, and Sarah had opened her own dressmaking shop. They visited often, bringing treats for little Eleanor, who called them Uncle and Aunt. Life wasn't always easy. There were still those who looked down on their mixed marriage, who refused to shop at their store or let their children attend Mercy's music school. But for every person who rejected them, there were many more who accepted them as they were. Mercy had never returned to Virginia, though Everett had gone back once after receiving news of his father's death. He had returned subdued but relieved, having made peace with his past and the choices that had led him away from his family's legacy. As for Belmont Estate, it had indeed been sold, divided into smaller farms. The grand house where Mercy had first revealed her voice stood empty and neglected, a fading reminder of a world that was slowly changing. "Mama, sing with me," Eleanor called, running to Mercy with her arms outstretched. Mercy laughed, lifting her daughter into a hug. "What shall we sing, my love?" "The Freedom Song," Eleanor requested, as she often did. Mercy looked at Everett, who smiled and nodded. It was their daughter's favorite, the story of how Mama and Papa had run away to find freedom and each other. As they sang together, their voices blending in perfect harmony, Mercy felt the familiar rush of gratitude for the life they had built. From slavery to freedom, from silence to song, from loneliness to love, Her journey had been difficult, but worth every step. The voice they had tried to silence had become a chorus, growing stronger with each passing year. And in that music, Mercy had found not just her freedom, but her true self. The end